the room. So feel free, and I believe the overflow room, this is being televised, so those of you who are not used to being on camera, don't let it bother you. Okay, so let's get started with our joint committee between the county and the city planning commissions. In order, let's see. I call to order this regular joint meeting of the Minnehaha County and Sioux Falls Planning Commissions, and we'll begin with a few introductory comments. As a courtesy, as usual, everyone tonight, please make sure your cell phones are turned off or any other distracted electronic device. The two planning commissions work together on land use and zoning matters within the rural areas surrounding the city. This area is displayed on the screen. After information and testimony is presented on an agenda item, the members will discuss the matter, and then each planning commission will vote independently to arrive at a decision. Any final action taken on conditional use permit request will take effect 5 working days following this meeting unless a written appeal of tonight's decision is filed in the county planning office by Monday, May 2nd at 5 o'clock. In the event of an appeal, the decision will be referred to the county commission and city council at their joint hearing on Tuesday, May 24th, 2016 at 5 o'clock. When the joint agenda is completed, the City Planning Commission will adjourn and the meeting will continue as the County Planning Commission considers items beyond the joint zoning jurisdiction. At this time, the Planning Commission will consider the consent agenda. The minutes from the March 28th meeting are included on the consent agenda. And are there any objections from the Planning Commission members to any items listed on the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I know
yes.
that the second item has got some people here that want to talk about it.
Okay, so you want that moved then?
Yes, sir.
We shall move that to the regular agenda. And next, and then that leaves only the minutes on the consent agenda. We're moving that to the regular agenda. So we need a motion first to approve the consent agenda.
That's my motion.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 The city side.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes on the city side.
Okay, so now, let's see here, we need a motion to approve the regular agenda, correct? Yes.
So second.
So second that?
Yes, sir.
The regular agenda, yes we do. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries on the county side.
Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes on the city side.
All right, let's move forward with conditional use permit 1625 to allow communication facilities. David, you are in charge.
Good evening, Commissioners. David Heinel, Planning Department. This conditional use permit request is to allow a communication facility, specifically the request is for a 12 by 20 building, as well as some ground mount satellite dishes that would be located on the property that's located just off Stokes Avenue, just a ways south of Arrowhead Parkway, an existing commercial district, on a vacant parcel of land that's about a little over, it's like 1.25 acres. The proposed satellite dishes, petitioner stated in the narrative, would stand just under 18 feet tall, which would be about 16.5, as is mentioned, 15 feet wide. That will be sitting on an 18-inch pedestal stand, which gives it a little extra height up to 18 feet, or just under that. As indicated on the site plan, which I'll skip forward here, the petitioner plans to have a 6-foot-high chain link fence around the entire perimeter of the site. Well, not the entire property boundary, but set back a little bit with the 10-foot setbacks on the side, the 20-foot on the rear, and then the 30-foot setback from the front yard property line off of Stokes Avenue. And then the building would be situated about right here, which would be about 10 feet tall, 10 feet 4 inches, 12 feet wide, and then 28 feet long. In addition to the building, a self-contained generator would be on the site, which is located just east of the building itself. That would be 10 feet long, 3 foot 8 inch wide, and 6 feet tall, located on the site, as you can see right there in the image on the site plan. On April 11th, staff met with the Sioux Falls planning staff, and just some of the concerns that we heard were the screening of the site, as we're there tonight, as far as the proposed satellite dish is 18 feet tall, can create some visual concerns from adjacent land uses. Just backing up here, as the existing commercial district is located to the north of the property, except for all but one property. This is used as a residence. It's been grandfathered in, and that's the only residential property there. But the rest of it, Split Rock Heights is a predominant, and so is the existing commercial area that has been in existence for quite some time. And then, as you can see, there's some vacant parcel of land as I'll move forward through some of the pictures, which one of the property owners who has plans for the area for future residential development and presenting concerns or screening and other things like that. So that's one of the major concerns that the city and the county planning staff saw with the proposed addition of the ground mount satellite dishes. Just going through some of the pictures of the site. This is the site, as you can see, for sale sign there. It sits up, you can see over the tops of the buildings, so it sits up a little bit higher than most of the properties to the east that are along Arrowhead Parkway in the background. And just moving forward, the property to the north is currently being operated as a garbage business. The garbage trucks, as long as they're licensed and operable, they're allowed to be permitted without screening, which is a less conditional use permit. So check through that. And then to the immediate west of the property, or more northwest, this is north of Quartzsite Drive, I believe. And then Stokes Avenue is right here in the foreground. The Split Rock Township storage building where they store their equipment and other vehicles there is right across the road. And this is looking north down Stokes Avenue. As you can see, the garbage business to the right, and then looking further down, you go down the hill. And then this is looking towards that vacant parcel of land where the residential would be. There is, along Stokes Avenue, a shelter belt that goes all the way around the property that's to the south. As you can see on this image right here, there's 3 rows of trees there, full of some deciduous coniferous trees. This is the property looking south towards that existing shelter belt on the high ground from the subject property, looking over the trees. Just going through, this is looking from the center of the site out towards the east, so a little bit more of a view of the middle of the building rather than just as opposed to the roofs from the Stokes Avenue view. Just looking north from the property, just another that high view as it sits. This is looking east down the Quartzsite Drive towards Split Rock Heights, which continues to meander towards Highway 100 and goes through there, towards that residential development area. This is the lone house that's on Stokes Circle, which is just off of Stokes Avenue to the south of the subject property. So there's one house there now, but the rest of the property is currently zoned rural residential, and there's about 7 to 8 acres south of the subject property. And then this is looking south back towards the subject property with the township garage right there. And this is looking towards the Split Rock the rest of the Split Rock subdivision area, 50 to 60 houses in that area. And again, looking through that. Just some of the criteria that we go through in determining conditional use permit. The effect upon the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the uses already permitted, and upon property values in the immediate vicinity. The area to the north of the subject property is primarily commercial land use, while the area to the south begins to blend into the more rural residential district in the existing Split Rock Heights subdivision of more than 40 single-family dwellings to the west. The lot immediately adjacent to the To the south of the site is an existing shelter belt, as I mentioned, with coniferous landscaping around the property. At a minimum, the petitioner should be required to screen the proposed satellite dish complex with a 90% opaque material reasonable for a location in transition from a commercial to a residential zoning district. The proposed use of a lot should have a minimal effect on property values of the adjacent properties. Two, that the effect upon the normal and orderly development improvement of surrounding vacant property for uses predominant in the area. The subject property is already zoned for commercial, which allows for certain other uses such as retail uses, office, and warehousing up to 10,000 square feet in one building, and other personal services as permitted uses that wouldn't have to go through the public hearing process. And then the remaining vacant properties, as I mentioned, are currently vacant and are zoned for rural residential and commercial property. The proposed use of the communication facility should not negatively affect the normal and orderly development of the area that has seen historically significant residential and commercial growth just outside the primary economic growth area of the City of Sioux Falls. Three, that utilities, access roads, drainage, and other necessary facilities are provided. The subject property is accessed off of Stokes Avenue, which is currently a gravel surface, so the petitioner would not be required to hard surface that driveway off of Stokes Avenue or their parking areas. A less impervious surface will allow drainage water to flow from the site into a natural water course at a somewhat steady rate as opposed to that hard surface driving area that could bring increased levels of surface water runoff from that hard surface that are naturally impenetrable to water. With that being said, I mean, as with any gravel surface, there is potential for increased soil erosion. As you can see, that site is built up quite high, which brings an increased potential for other runoff and erosion onto adjacent properties. As some of the concerns that have been brought forward to me as far as the adjacent properties, especially that existing shelter belt to the south that has been planted and has already been maturing over time, and what's the impact to those properties, that property as well, and the trees, the existing trees there. Since the site to be disturbed is over an acre, then the applicant would be required to submit a general permit through the Department of Environment and Natural Resources for any construction activities, which at that time would be developing a stormwater pollution prevention plan, which is included as a condition of approval should the planning commissions move for approval on this item, which details some things for mitigation of stormwater runoff and soil and sediment erosion from the site. And the petitioner has all other facilities that are necessary to the function of a communication facility, such as the satellite dishes themselves, and in conjunction with the set standards for these types of facilities. So the proposed communication facility would have an adequate area sufficient for parking of about 1 to 2 vehicles, which is pretty typical for any public utility or neighborhood utility facility. Of course, no parking would be allowed in the right-of-way of Stokes Avenue for longer than 72 hours by the current zoning ordinance standard. 5, that measures are taken to control offensive odor, fumes, dust, noise, vibration, and lighting, inclusive of lighted signs, so that none of these will constitute a nuisance. Proposed communication satellite dishes may be general nature, present noise and vibration issues. They may be similar to something like a lawn tractor, as was mentioned in the narrative, or something like a garage door opener, which is not uncommon with some of the warehouses in the area, existing warehouses in residential structures that are in the immediate and the surrounding area. As I mentioned, the surrounding area consists of other uses that are more, if not a little bit more intensive than land uses, such as automotive repair and other warehousing, storage, personal services. The proposed use should have a minimal effect on adjacent residential and commercial properties. Any lighting should be projected downward onto the property in order to emit light onto those residentially zoned and commercial properties. And other things, like developing a landscape and screening plan to mitigate some of those visual concerns presented by surrounding landowners and just passers-by. 6, that the health, safety, general welfare of the public in the comprehensive plan, that the proposed use is located in an area identified as a transition area in the Envision 2035 comprehensive plan. The primary goal of this area is to focus new growth and development within municipalities and areas adjacent to existing municipalities where services or infrastructure will be available. The proposed use is compatible with surrounding land uses and should not significantly affect the health, safety, and general welfare of the public. Petitioners stated in the narrative that they plan to add a small generator that would meet all the Sioux Falls City ordinances as far as sound dampening and other environmental needs, which they mentioned would produce less noise than the lawnmower, as indicated in the narrative. Recommendation. So staff finds that the proposed communication facility satellite dishes as an appropriate land use for the surrounding area, consistent with the goals and policies of the Envision 2035 comprehensive plan. Staff recommends approval of conditional use permit 1625 with the following conditions. The CUP 1625 shall allow communication facility satellite dishes. 2, that the property shall adhere to the submitted site plan dated 4/1/2016. 3, that all signage shall be in conformance with the Article 17 and 18 of the 2002 revised joint zoning ordinance for the City of Sioux Falls and Minnehaha County. The building permit is required for any signage, installation of any signage. 4, that a set of plans certified by a registered professional engineer be submitted prior to the building permit being issued for the cellular communications building. 5, that if mud, dirt, or other debris causes a nuisance to adjacent properties or is brought onto South Stokes Avenue, all driveways, parking lots, and outdoor storage areas shall be in conformance with the requirements of Section 16.04 of the zoning ordinance. 6, that the applicant shall provide a 90% opaque screening fence or with live trees around the entire perimeter of the subject property. 7, that a landscaping plan shall be submitted prior to construction and all landscaping shall be maintained in a live state and all noxious weeds be controlled. 8, that a stormwater pollution prevention plan and soil erosion and sediment control plan be submitted to the planning director prior to construction. 9, that all outdoor lighting shall be of a full cutoff and fully shielded design to prevent direct spillage of light beyond the property boundary. And 10, that the planning department reserves the right to enter and inspect the communication facility at any time after proper notice to the owner to ensure that the property is in full compliance with the conditional use permit conditions of approval in the zoning ordinance. And I'll answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you, David. Any questions for staff?
Any questions on the city side?
David, I got one question. I think it's East Stokes Road or whatever it is. At one time, wasn't that road, or it's been abandoned, right?
This road down here?
No, keep coming up, keep up. Right there, well, right at the intersection there. It did run into the property to the east there, right? And that's been abandoned?
Yes.
Vacated.
Or vacated?
Vacated.
That's on record, that's vacated.
Any other questions? Staff? If not, will the petitioner come forward first, please? Name and address.
Good evening. My name is Jim Berman. I'm the general manager of KSFY. Do you want my work address? Or? 300 North Dakota Avenue here in Sioux Falls.
Any questions from staff or conditions put forth?
No, other than I certainly don't want to take up a lot of your time. As you are aware, we are in the process of moving from the 300 building, right across the street, to our new location in Courthouse Square, and construction has already begun on that. And we are purchasing this land with the intention of putting our satellite dishes right now on this, as you probably have noticed, on the second floor of 300 building. But it's not really practical to do that on the Courthouse Square building for just a whole number of reasons. And so that is why we decided that this would be a more practical approach and make the most sense. So And I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Any questions? Go ahead.
I have a couple. It shows on the sketch that there's 14 satellite dishes. Is that the maximum amount that will be on that site then?
Right now, we are planning on 8 dishes to start, I believe, and then we're going to have 2 more cement pods, for lack of a better way of putting it, for the potential for some expansion. But 10 is really the max of what we are looking to do. So we do not anticipate we'll be doing more than that. Now, obviously, you never know with technology what could happen down the road, but we do not anticipate that we would need to go beyond that.
I have a couple more. What is the noise level with any of those satellite dishes when you're talking that many?
Very minimal. Dishes, for the most part, are stagnant. They don't move. There are times when you move them, but when you do move them, it pretty much sounds like, as it was mentioned, a garage door opening or closing. It's not anything that is really very dramatic, and they really don't move a lot. I mean, if you stood by a satellite farm, you would not hear a lot of noise at all.
Any questions? Okay, one more.
I got one more.
Yes.
Have you had any discussion, the roadway or the gravel road is maintained by the township there. It'd probably be in your best interest if this gets approved, that you have a discussion with them to let them know when you're bringing in whatever you are, in case it does tear up the road at all. I don't know if you're bringing by semis or trucks or whatever.
Yeah, that's a great point. And yes, obviously they are they're substantial, although they come in pieces, so it's not we don't bring them. They are assembled. So, but no, it's absolutely imperative that we make sure that we do that, and we will. But thank you for that suggestion.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have a few questions also. How often would the generator be running? Only when the dishes are being moved, or would they be a constant running?
Generator would only run when there is a need for it to run. Generator is a backup.
And so, like a power outage is
Power
that?
outage would be right, Mike. That would be pretty
That's
much.
correct.
My chief engineer will
Okay.
can answer most of those, but pretty much it hardly will ever be used.
Okay. And then the outdoor lighting, how much lighting would you anticipate will occur at the site?
I would say it would be whatever is required from a minimal perspective for safety. But there's no need. We're not going to be out there at night. There's no reason for anyone to be out there unless there's an emergency. So the light's going to be dim enough so that it will not have any effect on the surrounding area.
Okay, and then I have one last question. So these will be about 18 feet in the air, probably taller than most traditional screening fences. So if there were trees or some kind of a landscaping that were present, would it interfere with reception?
Well, we know that there are trees on the south part of the property, or off of the property, but bordering there. And we've already taken a look at that, and the angle. We're going to have the dishes situated in such a way that the angle to the sky, unless these trees became redwoods, we would have very little to be concerned about as far as that goes.
That's all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Just one more
I'm
question.
sorry.
This is just a very small one.
Sure.
Do you anticipate much signage, if anything, out there?
Again, there would be no reason for us to do anything signage-wise from a publicity perspective. That we're going to do on Courthouse Square, as you can imagine. Whatever is simply necessary to just identify what the land is, and we want to make it as minimal as possible. There's no reason to do a big advertising campaign in that particular area.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience would like to address this issue? Please come forward. State your name and your address.
I'm Craig Mark. I live at 7000 East 8 East Oak Circle. The house that you saw in that picture is my house there. This is my dad, Jerry. He owns the land on the other side, be the east or west side of Quartzsite. where they would be the south side of Quartzsite and the west side of Stokes Avenue. I have a few pictures that I was going to show you. I ain't going to go through a lot of them because you've seen basically what this here is the intended plan, and it's graded for that. Like you saw earlier, I live down on at the very east end of East Stokes Circle, and the cul-de-sac on Stokes Avenue is graded, but it's all in grass. And you can kind of see how the lots on the other side of Stokes Avenue are laid out.
And Mr. Harwood, this is looking at driveways going straight north up to Arrowhead Parkway, then is where that road ends up.
That South Stokes Avenue goes just down to Highway 42.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I just want to make sure I had the proper perspective as to where that driveway was going. So it's going to go past this current site we're talking about. Correct?
It follows the
This, the proposed site is right here.
Okay, I might come back to that. Okay, this is a picture of the back side, would be the very southeast corner lot of the site that they're talking about. I'm just showing you right now the grade of the lot. It's kind of hard to tell here, but it's very steep on the south side. So if you remember the fence location like on your drawing, on the south side, when it gets back towards the back, it's going to be, if they want the fence to be up on top at the grade height they have now, it's going to be extremely sharp. It's just going to drop, it's just going to be a real steep edge. Another thing is in the letter that you got, that's another reason why we brought up the lot grade, because we don't have anything that says what that lot grade is going to be. And I guess I'm thinking that lot should be lowered just because of the height that those dishes are going to be and the grade on both sides, on my side and on the garbage man's side. This picture is the same picture. This here is basically that same shelter belt that's on the south side of the lot of the proposed site. It's my shelter belt. In there's two lots that were set up for residential housing. That's looking southeast from Quartzsite and Stokes Avenue. This here is looking southwest from Quartzsite, Stokes Avenue. That part of that shelter belt, there's a little younger, so it's not as tall. This same picture. This here is from the very east end of Stokes Circle, looking east or looking west, and on either side is set up for two lots. In other words, just like that layout showed. And I've got power in the street, so I'm that far. Same picture. This here is a picture of off of basically your way to the southwest looking northeast. You can see my house on top of the hill, and if you look clear over to the left side on top, you can see that the county building. And that, what you see there basically, those hillsides is where these houses are going to go. It's the same picture. How do I get back to that?
Just go back to this other arrow. There you go.
This here is kind of I took the picture that was sent, and I had my landscaper draw up a minimum, what I think should be, And we basically put Colorado blue spruce around as much as we could, except for the south side. We didn't change the fencing or anything. We didn't move nothing. We're thinking that that fence should be moved over and should have spruce trees on that south side if this goes through. And the front they're showing, he's just got some flowering crabs. Those I'm thinking should be spruce also. This is like a minimum, I would think. That's also if the grade gets lowered, because it's the only way it's going to work on that south side, the way I see it anyway.
No, you're good.
Okay. I guess when it comes to explaining my property, that's all I have on that. I guess I got some questions for the owner or the engineer, whoever. I'm just wondering why they picked this spot, because I would think this thing could go anywhere, and because it doesn't need sewer or water. It's something you would see like in the middle of a commercial area, or like in the middle of an industrial area, or like out at the airport with a fence around it, or by tower sites. I guess, and he answered the questions, are the dishes going to be new? The way it sounded, they're going to be, some of them are going to be moved from the top of their building.
They're shaking their head no about that. They're all new.
They're all new. I guess if, according to your paperwork, it said that everything is going to be the same as on that site. So in other words, obviously there's not going to be any towers. I'm just wondering about the height of the dishes, if they're going to get changed. And another question would be like interruption for cell phones, internet. And when it comes to like the landscaping, it would be basically the grades of the lot, the heights of the site, of the dishes, like the planned time that they're going to work on this. Is it all going to be, is it going to have screening and everything in it, or is that going to be at the end when it gets totally done? Also, and he answered this question, we were really concerned about is the trees are going to affect those dishes someday that are on my side because of their height. Is that something where they kind of got an easement if something does get in the way later?
That would be a special condition. There's only one organization in the county that gets height clearance, and that's Aerostate. And if otherwise, it's FAA regulations.
I guess without these special, by the way, I'm Jerry Hart. Without these special conditions that he's talking about, I think we would recommend that you turn it down. But if you don't, we'd like to see these conditions, and I guess I got some other conditions here too. Nobody said anything about if it affects them. They would know that, and we was hoping to hear that here, if it would affect cell phones or any electronic equipment in the area.
We'll have them come forward and address that.
He said it didn't?
No, I said we'll have them come forward and address that question, because we have a couple issues for them to answer.
fence is to, on that low part, where it drops off on the south side. If you put a fence in there where you say you're gonna put it, it's gonna be below the ground, the rest of the top of it's gonna be below the rest of the lay of the land. And she said something about the lights. That's gonna point down, and we were concerned about the lights showing in the area. Are they high? Are they gonna be way up in the air, or are they gonna be kind of down low?
That's a requirement for a cutoff light. That means it can't shine off their property.
Can't shine off of it, no, but if it gets up high enough, you can see it, I suppose.
Well, if they're, no, not if they're cutoff lights. All you see is light underneath the light.
Oh, okay. I'd like to know too if the trees, once he's mentioned it, if they're growing up, and now they're right now, we just looked at some trees that was like 40 feet, 60, 100 feet high, and some of these trees in there will do that. Does that affect anything, that they have to cut the trees down or force us to cut them down? Can they do that?
It's not on their property. That's not your problem.
Yeah.
At least that would be my understanding, but that's a legal question that we don't answer.
Okay.
I got one other quick question is, like, and when it comes to the grade of the lot, I'm just wondering if they're gonna add on to the, sometime to the east. And that would affect the grade of this site right now, but that's just a, they were gonna plan on doing.
All right, thank you.
No, that's all I got.
Okay, well,
Thank you.
okay. Anyone else in the audience want to address this issue? All right, there.
Yeah, Kurt Anderson from the residents of Portside Circle.
Which
I got a
is
question
where-
if it's an uplink or a downlink satellite system. And what's the RF? Are they gonna point line of sight? Are they gonna shoot across our homes and send it somewhere? Or I guess that's what I'm interested in. And then
Okay, well,
having the trees
Okay.
falling off, like he said.
We need your address, Mr. Anderson.
6508 East Portside Drive.
Thanks.
Okay. We'll have them come
Hope
forward
you
and
can
ask those
answer that.
questions.
So.
Okay.
I'm Gary Busselman. I've owned some property in the neighborhood. If you could bring your map up of that, of the plat that showed the surrounding properties. We had a real nice one. My home's nowhere near this.
What is your address, by the way?
My home address is 7201 East Madison Street, Sioux Falls 57110. Okay, property that I own in the area is where the dot is. That's one of them. And if I move back, I own this one, and I'm immediately on the east side of your subject property. While I'm over there, I want to talk about that vacated Plymouth Road. I've owned these two lots since '81. I'm not aware that there was ever a Plymouth Road on my property, or that was ever vacated, or that it was ever on Stokes. It doesn't show up on my legal as vacated. So I don't think it was ever there. If it was ever there, it was before this was platted. It's a good question, but now we're relying on that Plymouth Road over here as access to get to this lot right here. We have a lot of interest in that. The other property I own in the area is right here, that big roof, and I own this lot right next to that. And so right now, I looked at the proposal. I don't have a problem with it. I would say go for it. Looks like it'd be a good neighbor. We don't have the water issues. We don't have the additional traffic. I mean, there's a lot of good about having a neighbor like this for me. This is a screwy lot, and Craig's pictures did a good job of, because he must have been on my lot there when he took some of them pictures. That's a lot of fill on that lot, and that drops off a lot. And the only issue with that steep of a drop off is the trees will grow up and everything will be fine back there, but that's gonna really be tough to get in there to mow them weeds. I've got a steep bank already on one of my buildings, and I pay that guy premium to get in there, and they have a tough time mowing that. And this one's gonna be easy to forget about because it's back there out of sight. But outside of that, my recommendation on this project is to approve it, go.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Busselman. Anyone else in the audience? If not, we'll give it one more.
I'm Ryan Tisdall, 101 South Reed Street. I represent the sellers of this land, the current owners. I do not represent KSFY in any way, but I do think their use is by far the least impact use of anyone who has shown interest in purchasing this property. I've had a number of parties in the last 6 to 12 months show interest, and to me, an unmanned communication site is the least impact on the neighborhood, the least impact on anything around it. To the question of why KSFY picked the site, again, while I don't represent KSFY, I believe they picked it because it's a small piece of land, which is all they need, zoned appropriately for their use. And the Har family actually is the family that zoned all this land years ago. So everything that is put in place there, as they talk about residential development to the south, they actually were the family that zoned this parcel of land. As you look at the pictures on the east side, there is quite a drop off there. Over the last several years, the City of Sioux Falls actually used this site to put extra dirt, as they had dirt from different projects, where they put it on here essentially to make the lot usable and desirable, which is what they've done. So in general, I would make the point that it's pretty low impact of a use and minimal impact on the neighbors in any direction.
Okay, thank you. We have one more, someone else here, something different to add.
Good evening. My name's Kevin Horner. I live in a property of approximately 2 blocks to the west of the court site. One question I have is, what stipulations do we have that there won't be any satellite dishes put up higher than the 18-foot level in the future? And the second thing, do we have any guarantees that they want to, at some point, put a tower up in this site? I don't know if that's feasible, but I think
that's a different conditional use permit altogether.
Okay. But I guess the one question I would have is the satellite dishes they currently are proposing are 18-foot. They have 2.
So it probably gives people a perspective. 18 foot is the height of the peak of that township building. I mean, if you want a perspective of how high it is, that's basically it. They got 12-foot doors, another 8 feet to the peak. That's 18 feet.
Top of a 18-foot building, though, is something that's pretty typical in that area versus driving down the road and seeing 18-foot satellite dishes in your view.
But that is the height.
Okay. Well, I would just recommend that you do not approve this conditional use.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to address this? Otherwise, I think we have a few questions for the petitioner to answer. Could you come forward again, please?
I'd like to also bring my chief engineer up.
Absolutely.
Mike Borsick, KSFY Chief Engineer, 300 North Dakota Avenue.
Well, first of all, just to address some of the concerns, why we picked the spot simply because it was consistent with the current use in the area, already zoned commercial, and a small piece of land that just fit our needs perfectly. So that's the main reason. Just to clarify, it is all new equipment. As you can imagine, unlike moving a store, we can't shut down. We have to be operating at our current location right down to the last second before we throw the switch to the new place. So everything in our new building is new, including the satellite dishes. So there is no carryovers as far as that goes. There is no interruption of anything. Think of satellite dishes no different than if you have a DirecTV or a dish network dish. They're smaller, but they don't create interference. These are reception dishes. We are not transmitting from that site. We will never transmit from that site. That's a totally different thing. The data or the images, signals that we will be getting from space down to the dishes are then sent via fiber to our studio. And then fibered back out to the transmitter. It's a kind of a strange little loop, but it's all underground with SDN related fiber. But none of that is a concern at all. See,
basically, you're saying it's fiber to the studio here in town out to there, just like a telephone line.
That's right. It's all fiber. The whole thing is fiber. The location of the fence on the south side. Do you want to talk about that at all, or I don't remember what the question was with that.
I think the grade of the lot is probably the biggest thing that came up. The steepness of the back of the lot and screening.
Well, I can't.
Well, we do have a architect and everything else sign on to take a look at all that. We also realized, we just realized that there's a easement of 40 feet there, so we're not going to put anything that can't be moved on that 40 feet on that south borderline. So depending on what the architects and everybody else find out, I'm sure they'll address the grade.
The point of the satellite is, you know more about that, it's the southern direction, right? I mean,
yeah, well, at the communication satellite, there are one set up at every 2 degrees up in the just above the equator. Because of that, various television signals come at various different satellites depending on what contract they do with what. We need to be able to see the whole arc, and that's from the east to the west, and as you come towards the south, the dishes will point up higher, and most of our broadcast satellites are straight south of us. So they're going to be pointed up at 43 degrees, basically, and they'll shoot way over the top of, I mean, the signal will come way over the top of those, any trees in the near future, or even, because we're also setting the satellite dishes further to the north, that gives that look angle much bigger, so a 100-foot tree is not going to bother us at all. And besides that, we don't have any right to say knock the tree down anyway. That's
exactly.
an FAA situation and a FCC. So,
as far as the satellite being higher than 18 feet, I can't imagine a scenario, and you know more about this.
Well, let me address that a little bit. When we say 18 feet, that's the top of the arch of the satellite dish. So actually the center of the dish is going to be, it's a 15-foot dish, so about 7.5 feet down from the 18 feet is the center of the dish. So that all you're going to see is the slope of the dish at 18 feet.
Exactly. And no one can predict the future. I mean, there's no way to know that, but I just know that technology has things getting smaller, not bigger. So I would say if I were to speculate 10, 15 years down the road, the dishes will probably become smaller, not larger. But I couldn't stand here and guarantee anything as far as that goes. And as far as a tower, that will never happen. We have no interest. We have a tower. That land would not be suitable for a tower. A tower requires
a lot more FCC regulations.
Exactly. That land would not be suitable for it. It's not something we would ever consider.
Somebody ask the board any other questions of the petitioner while we're here? Otherwise, we'll.
I would ask one question.
Yes.
I was out there and took a look at it. It looks like the fill is, like muck from a slough. Is that going to support your structures?
We're having engineers address that. We've already had a board test. Some of our footings will have to probably go down to the natural soil, make sure that the dishes don't move. The reason why we go with a 15-foot dish, like you said, the signals are getting less. The signal's getting to be so sensitive to movement and everything else. We cannot have those dishes move. And another good thing about the fact that we got all brand new dishes, they're all going to look the same. It's not going to look like our add-on situation we had over here on the roof. So it'll be a very clean looking area.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, that's all.
Do you gentlemen have a build-out time set at this point? When you think you'll have the dishes, the fencing, any other borders around there finished up?
Well, if everything goes correctly, we got a timeline where we'd like to start installing the dishes by July 1st.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I think we'll close the floor. Action by the commission or discussion. So what's your thoughts or wishes on this one at this time, please?
Bonnie, you know that area pretty well?
I do. You know, it's zone commercial.
Yeah.
Most of the business, I mean, you have spotty residential in there, but that's mainly a commercial area.
Always has been.
Yeah, and always had, I mean, I've been out there 32 years and it's been that way. So I don't, the only thing that's really maybe changed is maybe ownership in the properties, that's about it. So I can't say that we shouldn't approve it.
So you have a motion to that effect?
We already have in the recommendation criteria, including your landscaping plan that would be submitted and approved by our staff. I am comfortable with the recommendations set forth, and I move for acceptance and approval of this commissioner's permit.
Do you have a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second discussion.
I just wonder if there are any additional restrictions or conditions that we should put on it at this time. You know, the opponent, the neighbor, had a landscaping scheme that he proposed. And what about the fence issue? Are we comfortable that we're in good shape on those things? I'm fairly comfortable, but I wanted to ask.
So you have additional thoughts regarding the fence? I mean, the person who's probably affected most by the fence is the property owner to the east. Mr. Busselman's property is probably affected the most. And he's fine. Do we have a motion and a second?
There's a motion and a second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries on the county side.
Move for approval as submitted with the conditions as submitted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Well, I agree with Commissioner Barth and Randall that the staff did put in a condition for landscaping. And I appreciated the work that the Hearts did too. I mean, it takes a lot of work to prepare to come and a lot of courage to come. And I know in all of these cases, the land that you own and develop is sometimes the largest investment that we have. And so we appreciate you coming forth tonight. The landscaping plan is in one of the conditions, and so I appreciate what again Commissioner Randall and Bart said. So with that condition, I'm comfortable with it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes on this case item.
Okay, so that should conclude the joint county planning zoning meeting. We'll let you leave, and we will be convening as the county planning and zoning.